Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft. I'm writing this under an appreciable mental strain. By tonight I shall be no more penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug, which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or 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 degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. It was in one of the most open and less frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk till later the the the, the Gratian, so that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, while we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners. So liberal indeed was the discipline of our captors that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight. The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting for either some passing ship or to be passed from the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of the unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dreamy, was continuous. When I at last awakened, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy face of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away, though one might as well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation scenery. I was in reality more horrified than astonished, for there was in the air and the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid, with the carcasses of decaying fish and other less describable things, which I saw protruding the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and homogeneity of the landscape opposed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, and though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet, I crawled into the stranded boat. I realized there could be only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions which for innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the surging ocean, strain my ears as I might, nor were there any sea fowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side in the forest, slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As day progressed, the ground muscled with stickiness and seemed to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes. In a short time, that night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and waters, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight and evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rode higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert. That night I encamped, and on the following day still traveled towards the hummock. Though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first despised it, by the fourth evening I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. In the surface, too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadows of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fashion remarked as I say, their words so slight and evil, to determine to sleep no more. Such visions as I hadn't experienced were too much for me to endure again. In the glow of the moon, I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, now I felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I had said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of a vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater